After discussing the finer points of music and video production for at least the next 20 minutes, all while Juan continued to chat with his fans, Rancora had successfully positioned herself as a music industry authority. She could see that Mallory already considered her to be a trusted new mentor, which was further confirmed when Mallory asked if Rancora would like to check out her home studio. Sure, Rancora agreed. Great, let's go. You don't need to wait for Juan? Rancora asked. No. Mallory shook her head and shot a final look of contempt at the crowd, which had thinned only slightly for a time, but again grew as more teenaged wishlings entered the mall and learned that Juan was there. We have an understanding that whenever the Juanades show up, he takes the bus home. Cool. Rancora nodded, impressed. Once they were inside her black sedan, Mallory cranked up the stereo and played some of her favorite bands for Rancora as she drove through one busy city street after another. Meanwhile, Rancora continued to receive useful information from her pendant about everything from the hottest and most reputable Wishworld music video producers to the latest production equipment. Wait, what? Mallory gasped, nearly swerving off the road as Rancora began to name drop. You've worked with Ross Vegas and Spike Tool? Yeah, Rancora replied. But Monkey Germs was the one who taught me everything I needed to know. No way! Mallory slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching as she made a turn. Monkey Germs? He's the bomb. Right? Rancora agreed, clutching the edge of the dark red leather seat as Mallory sped up again. And you know what he told me? Mallory shook her head and Rancora took a deep breath, not only because Mallory's driving was somewhat terrifying but also because she was about to share some information that, if all went well, would allow her to help Mallory with her triple wish. Producers have the power to make or break their artists, and most of us are killing the industry, Rancora revealed. Seriously? Mallory focused her wide eyes on Rancora as she pulled the car to a sudden stop on the side of the road. How so? We're covering everything up too much, making artists sound too perfect, not enough like themselves, Rancora explained. Mallory slammed her hands against the red leather steering wheel and nodded. Yes. Yes. I've been saying that for years. And I hate to say it, but that's exactly what I've been doing with Juan. Rancora acted as if she understood but then, somewhat confused, tilted her head. Why did you stop the car? Oh, we're here. Mallory pointed out the car window at a small white house with a red door. After they both got out, Mallory led Rancora up a brick path, which divided the front yard in two and then wound around to the back of the house, where there was a smaller white building. It appeared to be what Wishlings called a garage, but when Mallory clicked on a small black device and the large, heavy door slowly opened, Rancora saw that it was filled with all sorts of musical instruments and electronic equipment. Come on in, Mallory said as she sat down on a rolling metal stool and positioned herself in front of one of several computer monitors sitting on a massive black desk. Rancora took the other rolling stool and sat next to Mallory, who began clicking on various images on the monitor until a series of videos came up. I'm sure you've already seen all these, Mallory said as she scrolled through the images, which each had Juan's name and a song title next to them. Of course. Rancora narrowed her eyes as she examined the screen. Do you have anything new, stuff you haven't finished producing yet? Oh, yeah, tons. Mallory clicked over to an image of a folder titled Juan Rough Cuts, which contained a list of at least 50 files. But he would kill me if I ever played these for anyone without mixing them first. That was it, Rancora's chance to help Mallory make her wish, or possibly all three wishes, come true. I bet they're not that bad, Rancora said. Remember what I was saying earlier about what Monkey Germs told me? Yeah. But, well, it's true, Rancora interjected. You have to give the public a chance to hear the real Juan. Weren't you telling me earlier how much you wished his fans could hear what he really sounds like? I didn't mean it that way, said Mallory as she again scowled at Rancora like she'd just morphed into a Juanabe. I mean, if you heard this stuff, Rancora smiled and tightened her fists, ready to go in for the kill. But I haven't, she insisted. Nobody has but you. So pick a track and put it up online. It's the honest thing to do. I don't know. Mallory mashed her dark purple lips together and took a deep breath. Don't you see? Rancora demanded, desperate to get the mission moving. This isn't just a chance to show people the real Juan, it's a chance to show them the real you, the producer who works the magic that makes him sound so amazing. Finally, you'll get the credit you deserve. Rancora looked from Mallory to the screen, where she could see the tiny arrow hovering over one of the unmixed videos. She looked down at Mallory's hand, positioned over the computer mouse, trembling but so close to clicking it. Rancora centered her eyes upon Mallory's fingers, mustering every bit of negative energy manipulation she could until, at last, Mallory clicked down and dragged the file over to the LinkTube window. As the video began to upload, Rancora braced herself for the first wave of negative energy she would collect. As soon as that video went live, Mallory's first wish, for people to hear what Juan really sounded like, would come true. But would they see that he wasn't as great as they thought? Would he get hundreds of negative comments? That would take time. However, the moment Juan's video went live, a fantastic cloud of negative energy flowed like a black fog from Mallory and went swirling into the crystal teardrop hanging around Rancora's neck. But that's not what thrilled Rancora the most, it was the sound of Juan's voice and the rough mix of the video that sent a surge of power coursing through her once again. He sounded awful, and over the course of the next several minutes, the views began to add up. Mallory's other two wishes would come true in no time. Rancora was certain of it. Sure enough, the backlash from Juan's fans was almost immediate and the comments became more and more brutal as the minutes ticked by. Is this a joke? Asked one. My ears are bleeding. Said another. I want those 3 minutes and 9 seconds of my life back, a former fan lamented. Is there any way to unwatch that? Begged yet another. I join as far away from that video as possible, someone else declared. As she read one comment after another, Mallory shot a panicked look at Rancora, but it was too late for her to turn back. Another huge dark cloud of negative energy was already swirling around her and winding its way over to Rancora's pendant. I didn't mean for this to happen. Mallory cringed, slapping a hand over her eyes in an apparent attempt to shield them from all the hateful comments Juan's video had already received. I have to take it down, don't I? Rancora shook her head. Absolutely not, she insisted. Give it some time. His true fans will probably see the raw talent that's still there and come to his defense. Plus, we need to wait until people start commenting on the production of all the earlier videos when they realize how different this one looks and sounds. You'll finally get the credit and stardom you deserve. Of course, Rancora didn't really care if any of that happened. She simply needed to ensure that the video stayed up long enough for Bad Wish number 3, the gathering of hundreds of negative comments, to come true. So she sat there with Mallory, waiting as patiently as she possibly could, drawing strength from all the negative energy she had collected. Ultimately, within less than an hour, it had happened. The third wish had been fulfilled and the most enormous cloud of negative energy that Rancora had ever seen began to swirl around Mallory, practically filling up the entire studio before winding into a thick tornado and diving into the crystal pendant with a final, satisfying swoosh. Back in the negative energy facility at last, Rancora shed her glimmermoth form and struggled to walk as she made her way through the fine gray mist and past the rows of moaning and wailing orbs. When she finally reached her lair in the back of the NEF, Rancora would greet all the little images of the wishlings she'd assisted on her Bad Wish missions, which were now joined by Mallory's sad face. But instead, she doubled over in agony. That was the one unfortunate side effect of helping to grant bad wishes. Each mission depleted her, and left her feeling physically ill. Of course she should have known that granting 3 bad wishes in such close succession would exhaust her more than any single mission had. Once she could walk again, Rancora marched over to a large black box sitting on her dark glass bench and carefully raised the lid. Inside, resting on a bed of velvety gray fabric, was a giant version of the crystal teardrop hanging around her neck. She removed her pendant and transferred the negative energy from the smaller teardrop to the larger one, just as she always did when she returned from a bad wish mission. But this time, the giant crystal began to shake with an intensity Cora had never seen before, and that was when she knew that it had finally been filled to capacity. At last! At last, she screamed with victorious delight, raising the enormous teardrop over her head. At last I have enough. She had been waiting for that day, the day she would have enough negative energy to take over Starland, for so long. And now, finally, it was time for her to move on to the next phase of her plan.